All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name's Kelsey Lathrop. I am the marketing lead here at PrintCom. And thank you for joining us for our best practices using your customer data to improve your direct mail results webinar. If you have any questions today throughout the webinar, please put them in the Q&A section. I will be monitoring that throughout this presentation, and we will see if we can weave those in. If we don't answer your question here on the webinar today, we will reach out to you afterwards to make sure we get those answered. And joining us today is Kevin Naughton, PrintCom president, and he will be presenting for you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Kelsey. Kelsey's going to be watching the questions as they come in this afternoon. Pardon my gravelly voice today. We've had an explosion of pollen here in Michigan in the last week, and so the allergies are like fully engaged at the moment. Hopefully this gives you some info you can take back. I will tell you at heart, I'm a marketing and sales guy, direct marketing guy. And that's kind of the bias I bring to the conversation today. If you're like big IT background, SQL experience, and you've got, questions to get into like real technical stuff, coding, that sort of thing, go ahead and ask your question, but I might have to get somebody else involved in helping answer some of that stuff, but we're happy to. Okay, so let's talk about the agenda a little bit. We're going to spend some time talking about finding more prospects that look like your best customers using modeling. We're going to talk about a couple different takes on modeling. There's actually a lot of takes on modeling, but we're going to talk about a couple customer models versus response models. And then we're going to talk about how models can account for differences in markets. When we say markets, speaking of geographically, because not all markets look the same. We're going to talk a little bit about using transactional data to reduce churn, retention marking, really. So you can sell more, retain more customers. We're also going to talk about some low-cost address append strategies. This is actually a giant deal, like that a lot of people probably don't give enough thought to. And then a little bit on offer strategies. We're going to kind of answer that question, should everyone get the same offer? Okay, so let's start out by talking about how you can find more prospects that look like your best customers. So in direct marketing, really what you want to do is identify your best customers, and then you want to find more people that look like them. And an alternative to that is, or the people that are most likely to buy. A little bit of difference there. And really what you want to do to get the highest ROI is to eliminate as much of the chaff as possible. Our roots in print, and maybe it almost sounds like sacrilege coming from a print firm, but if we can get the same results by mailing to 20, 30, 40% fewer people, then that makes a lot of sense. And modeling can help you get there. The reason being, postage is really expensive, and it's going up again in July, so reducing the piece count is going to improve the ROI. I'll spend a little bit of time on this. Shared mail, reduces postage costs, but sends a lot of mail to people that really don't look like customers. And the ROI can be lower. I'll give you for instance, we're working with a company, I won't name them, but we ran a model on them, and only about 9% of the population really looks like their customers, multiple characteristics. And so, they're mailing for about 50 cents a piece, roughly, postage and print cost. And, you get shared mail in the, depends on the market and the type of piece, 8, 9, 10 cents a piece. Well, if 91% of the people in that shared mail buy are chaff, then then you actually are spending more to reach a qualified prospect than you would be by targeting. The dynamics can change based on what percentage of the population is truly a prospect, looks like your customers. But shared mail isn't for a lot of people, frankly. And like, here's another premise: we need to focus less on outbound piece cost and postage and component cost. I see way too much focus put on outbound cost and not enough on ROI. If I can reach as many real live prospects, not just warm bodies, for 30 or 40% more, that's a win. There needs to be more emphasis on cost per acquisition and lifetime customer value. That determining cost per acquisition and also lifetime customer value would certainly be meaningful metrics to start tracking. Okay, so a little bit of modeling 101. So when you want to have a model built, you hand over consumer data, or excuse me, your customer records. And we don't recommend all customer records. We recommend the customers that look like the ones you want to have more of, not the ones that are like low margin, low frequency. So you want to look at the good customers, and you're going to append a whole bunch of consumer data on them. The big data compilers out there, they've got, I'm told, like 1,000 columns of data on just about every individual in the United States, about 270 million of them. And so they append all that data to the individual records, and then they use advanced analytics techniques, SQL type stuff or AI, to determine the traits that predominate in the customer base and what the associated weighting should be. I'll give you, for instance, when people go to one of these online data ordering sites, they start, well, we really want people in this income range. Well, does that mean somebody outside that income range never buys? Well, yeah, sometimes they do. So you might weight an income range heavier, one heavier than another, without excluding some others. You just kind of put all these weights together to develop scoring values, and you can then place the individual, so you can score each individual consumer that you're evaluating for a prospect mailing using the model, and you then can divide them up into deciles. So a decile is just a slice of 10. There's other terms used. Quintiles is slicing the universe up into 5 slices. Ventiles is 20 slices. So you can slice it up as many times as you want to. And so then, to kind of back test the model, you look for the number of, you use these customer values and rank them, descending, and then you bust them up into chunks. And you then match your customers back up to these people to find out how many show up in each decile or quintile or ventile. And that is used to determine a lift index, which is, the likelihood of finding a customer in the decile versus picking a name out of the hat. I'm going to stop sharing my screen just for a minute here. If anybody ever wants to see a copy of a model report, just let us know, and we'd be happy to share some examples. There's different takes on it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about a customer model versus a response model. Once I say this is going to sound like really no duh, but not everybody's familiar with it, so I'll just throw it out there. A customer model uses customer data as the basis for building the model, and you would pick the customers from the best segments. A response model, on the other hand, uses responder data as the basis for building the model. So if you can keep track of who actually responds to direct mail that you send, and you have enough responders, you can actually build the model, append all the consumer data to them, and go through a modeling process, just like if you were, building out a customer. So there's, I think, a couple key questions that you have to ask to determine, whether you should use a customer model or a response model. The question is, are you looking for the highest value customers or the people most likely to respond? And there are differences. So the next question then is, how much difference is there in response, margin value, frequency, and lifetime value between the two models? I have seen situations where there is very little difference in response between the customer model and the response model, but there's significant difference in margin value or customer value. I've seen just saw one recently where the response value, the response model actually had a higher response rate, as one would think, lower cost per acquisition, and the margin value ended up being like right in the same ballpark. And so in that case, and that was ascertained by running, out side-by-side testing and measuring the responses that came back in. So listen, if you're in the direct marketing game, you should be testing, like testing all the time. And you might have to do some testing to figure out, like in your environment or your customer's environment, if you're, actually selling direct mail, which model is going to work best. And then I'd also say keep on testing, because you will find ways to make it get better over the long haul. Okay.
Kevin, we've got a question that came in here. How many customer records do you need to run an accurate model?
Well, for all of you that took a stats class back in college, there's answers on statistical significance, right? You can only model what you have. In a perfect world, it's nice to get 50,000 customer names or more, because that yields the greatest potential for having statistically relevant results. We've done them for people with 20,000 customer names, because that's all they had. Like, and now, having said that, you probably don't want to go back more than a year or two, because, like, hey, 3 or 4 years ago, we're in the middle of the pandemic, and even then, that's like ancient history, right? Like, so, I would say as many good customers as you can find in the last 1 to 2 years. We've done models with as few as 2,500 customers, but that's like really low. I would say like 20,000 would be like a low end number, and 50 or more, the more the better. Did that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Okie dokie. Excuse me. Okay, how models can account for differences in markets. So when companies have a lot of locations, there can be significant differences between a store in, I'm from Michigan, so I'll use Michigan references, significant differences in the market, say, between a store in Gaylord, Michigan, and one in Grand Rapids, and one in Metro Detroit. The population density can vary. Market penetration can vary. So like that market penetration is quite often a function of the longevity of the store, right? Like, if you got a well-established store that's been in a market for 40 years, they will have penetrated the market to a much greater extent than like a store that opened in 2022. Perhaps in a locale where that brand had never been before. Okay, and I guess that speaks to number 4. Different degrees of brand recognition. Competitive dynamics are different. You know, if you're like a multi-location retailer, or you do work for people like that, you know, the preponderance of competitors in the market and how big a beachhead they've got established can be really a huge deal. That one is a little harder to build into a model, but it can be done. So the bottom line is a one size, fits all model isn't going to work in all markets. I recall we built a model for one of Steven's customers, and we looked at some stores in like Indianapolis area, I think Greensboro, North Carolina, and San Diego. Incomes are different. House values are different. There can be some pretty significant differences. So you may start with a model that is just kind of a one size fits all, and then maybe branching into doing a more segmented model based on the differences in markets. Okay. Models evolve. So, building a model is not like a do it one time and you're all done sort of exercise. It's like any other direct marketing activity. You collect some data, you develop the model, validate, you test, and then you monitor the results and tweak. And I could have put that marketing circle in there, right? Basically lather, rinse, repeat, and you're going to be lather, rinsing, and repeating for perpetuity. Probably if you're in the marketing game, you're always trying to make it get better. You may see, once you start taking some of that newer response data and feeding it like back into the model, you may see that there are certain characteristics that are playing out heavier than your initial findings. So, if you do a model, just be committed to trying to improve it over the course of time.
Kevin, we've got another question.
Okay.
How much does it cost to do a model?
Okay. I'm not going to try to sound evasive here, but it all depends. There are some really basic lookalike type models that can be done that are literally $300, $400, $500. Not that expensive and can give you some good insights. And then I've seen more complex modeling processes that cost like a few $1,000s. So, quite often what I'll see happen is somebody maybe just kind of from a low risk, low expenditure perspective might start out looking at like one of the inexpensive ones. And then once they start seeing some results, may decide to have some more extensive data science work done. So that would, take it up into the thousands. Another thing that can impact the price of the model is, if there's a commitment to purchase like some consumer data that's actually going to be driven by the model, some of the companies will refund entirely the modeling cost. So, and there's some pretty creative approaches on data purchasing too. If you become a high volume user of data, I've seen some of the people we use get pretty creative to, try to get a good, predictable ongoing revenue stream for themselves. So kind of a mixed bag of answers there. Really, it's going to be situation specific, I would say. If you're interested in going down that track, reach out to us and we can ask a few questions and try to pin it down a little bit better. Okay. So customer churn. What's a customer churn model? So the goal of churn modeling is to try to come up with a way to predict which customers are likely to stop using a product or service, and to take proactive steps to retain those customers. So there's some things you're going to have to think through. The first one is you've got to define churn and what constitutes a lapsed customer. And that varies from organization to organization. As a, for instance, like something like a car. Some people buy a new car every year. Some people buy a new car every 2 years, 3 years. Some people buy them and drive them until they die. In that case there, what constitutes churn actually varies by customer. Now, there's other markets, for instance, like groceries. Somebody's got to buy groceries probably every week or 2 weeks, maybe less, expensive trips, even like interim trips. So, somebody's been coming every week and they don't come for 2 or 3 weeks, and maybe they went on vacation, but maybe they moved, but maybe they've started going somewhere else. Auto service is another example that can vary. So the definition of lapsed can vary based on the business that you're in, but it also can vary by customer. And I've got that as the second point. Buying frequency is a key consideration and varies by customer. So the best models look at recency and frequency on an individual basis and determine who's at risk. So there's actually algorithms that can get written that basically can look at frequency of purchase by customer. And then when was the last time? Let's just say let's throw out an illustration here. Let's say the algorithm points out that Kelsey comes into my store every 6 weeks, and the last time she came in was 3 weeks ago. That would be the recency part of it. So the algorithm would return a result that she is not at risk of churn. On the other hand, if she had 6 week average purchase intervals and she hadn't been in 7, then she might be at risk of churn and probably would be somebody who should be targeted. So that's really what the best models do for churn reduction. And so, then you get into the question, how often should you mail people? And that's going to vary business by business, right? It's like some people doing it monthly is enough. Now, I haven't said that. Even if you do it monthly, that doesn't mean everybody's in the mailing every month. Use auto service as an example. I put 24,000 miles a year on a car. I'm going to go get an oil change every 6 to 8,000 whenever my, oil life meter hits 20-25%. I need service about every 3 months. My mother, who is 87, just extended her lease in December and has driven 200 miles since December. And I'm not lying, folks. That's the God's honest truth. She rarely needs a service offer. So let's pretend that I just had service last month. If I have a 3-month interval, I wouldn't pop up as being someone who should get mailed to this month. They might want to wait till next month and get the coupon in front of me right as I'm about ready to run out. So Now back to the whole, how often should your mailings be? Well, it depends on how frequent the purchases are. Like if you're in a business where people are using your stuff very frequently, you might want to mail once a week, or twice a month, or even daily. It varies from company to company. So another thing that impacts this, I've got this is the fifth bullet point. Segmenting is a factor also. Some customers are low value or promiscuous. Like, this is a decision that every direct marketer needs to make. Like, is this a segment worth marketing to? If their purchases, I mean, I've seen situations where companies were like doing frees. If you're doing frees, stop doing frees unless you tie it to a dollar value, like free with $50 purchase or something like that. But without that, like, this customer is actually a negative margin or like toxic offer customer. Like, okay, so you might try lobbing a free with 50 and see if they respond, and if they don't, like, stop marketing to them. Promiscuous customers, some people call these sporadic customers. It's like hard to see any kind of frequency, like repetition or pattern. So I say segmenting is a factor. It's like you might want to eliminate low values, and you might want to eliminate sporadics, or at least prioritize them like very low, as far as like including them in a churn model. Okay. Using your existing transactional data. So to do this sort of churn model type development, or cross-sell upsell, which is closely related, you really got to have point of sale system data. It doesn't matter which point of sale system. So you got to have the ability to associate purchases, dates, and even SKUs with each customer. And you got to have that. You got to have that if you really want to do this really good, retention marketing. The process of analyzing all that data can, first of all, help you develop segments. If you haven't got segments, that's like a really good starting point. Most often when you start creating offers, you're going to want to have segment-specific offers. Now, you'll apply them on a personal level, but you're not going to have a different offer for every consumer. Like, you're going to have offers for segments, and then you decide what consumers are in the segments. Transactional data can also be used to identify specific triggers or events that are associated with churn. So, like, I don't know how many of you, like, have ever gotten a gym membership like Planet Fitness, or Netflix is really good at this. Like, if they see you, when you go into a Planet Fitness, they scan your tag. And Netflix knows when you log in and watch a show, and they know when you don't. So what both of them do, if you stop coming, they start throwing a bunch of stuff at you to get you re-engaged. And so that's an example of a trigger based on lack of activity, actually. There's lots of examples on how you can use purchases. Amazon's really good at this. You buy something and they throw predictive purchases. This isn't really churn modeling, it's cross-sell upsell, but based on what you buy, they're going to throw other suggestions at you. Or if you want to get really sneaky about it, they're going to monitor your audio on your phone, and then you've got like ads showing up in your email and social media feeds like within a few hours. Anyway, digressed a little bit there. Okay, so that's how you can use your existing transactional data to reach more customers. Okay, a little bit on address appending. And the big question is, why do they matter? So I'm going to ask a question here. What percentage of your customers do you have addresses for? If you're like selling direct mail or an agency, what percentage of your customers do they have addresses for? I'm going to be willing to bet if you really delve into that, in a lot of cases, it's less than 50%. And so why does that matter, right? So there are some harmful impacts. So the first one is you can't mail to people you don't have addresses for. Direct mail drives more sales dollars than many other channels. Now, this is interesting. Like, it isn't necessarily the highest ROI channel. Because if you're measuring ROI by how much sales you got versus how much you spent, there's like lower cost channels. Yeah, I'll give you, for instance, I could spend 50 grand on email and get $250,000 worth of sales, and I got 500% ROI. Depends on whether you're measuring ROI against sales or margin. If I was measured against sales, there would be 500 to 1. Now, maybe I spend $500,000 on direct mail. I mail out 1 million pieces, 50 cents a piece. And I got $2 million in sales back. That was only 200% ROI. So the question is, which channel worked better? Now, if I'm looking at percentages, I think the 500 ROI one was better. But like, if you own a company like I do, like, I'd much rather have $1 million than $200,000. So, and I brought this all up in the context of this first comment. I mean, I've had customers tell me this based on their measuring. Direct mail drives more sales dollars than the other channels they use. And you can't mail to people you don't have addresses for. I'll give you another, for instance, here. We just did an address append effort for a client, and they had over 7 million customers without names, and we picked up exact matches based on phone or email for about 1,800,000 of those, and then we've got exact match on last name on like another 500,000. So we added those addresses for those 1.5 million people into their CRM database, and they were employed like on a mailing in March, and their sales out of the retention category were $900,000 higher. So you can't, you gotta find addresses, because it's going to make your sales grow. Now, I would recommend that you talk to us about that, because like, if you call some of these data companies, they're going to want 10 cents an appended name and stuff like that. It's just like highway robbery. But I'm not just throwing sales hyperbole at you. We've got a pretty good hookup on data appending, and it's like, doesn't need to cost anywhere close to that. So here's the other harmful impact of not having customer addresses. You can't suppress customers you don't have addresses for from prospect mailings, which means you've got customers getting rich prospect offers being redeemed by customers you already have. Like, we do some business with some franchise networks where like some of the stores are owned by local owners, and like nothing ticks those people off more than to be given a big rich discount to like somebody that's been coming into their store for like months or years. So margin cannibalization is a big issue and another big reason for address appending. And I guess the closely related issue there is you'll have fewer, if you work for a franchise system, actually work for them or do work for them, you're going to have fewer franchise owners like giving you the finger, like if you find a way to get like the customers out of the prospect offers. Okay. And like, so here's a big question, and this would be worth running a business case on. How many margin dollars are you giving away per year? Let's just say a normal customer gets a 10% offer, and the prospects get a 25% offer. Like, how much does that extra 15% cost? How many times a year? Do the math on that. And then like start thinking about what could we do to reduce that. So here's just some quick strategies. So basically address appending adds missing or incomplete address information to customer records. If you have an email or phone, you can make a dent. So here's some good strategies to consider. The first one is third-party data. There's people that we can submit your list of customers with no addresses to for appending, and can get some pretty strong results. Some of the stuff I've seen is exact matches on about 20-something% of the names, and fuzzy matches like up close to 50%. Okay, another one is like a lot of retailers, they'll get email addresses or phone numbers so they can send emails or texts to customers. So you're sending offers to them via email, you're sending offers to them via text. What if you gave them a spiff, maybe like $5 off next time they come in? I'm making that up. It'd vary based on retailer, but what if you did like a variable data email or text that basically gave them $1 off a next purchase just to the people you don't have the addresses for, and giving them a $5 or $10 off offer after you do the math I kind of talked about before, where you contemplate margin cannibalization times frequency. A $5, $10, $20 offer might end up being like a really cheap date to get them to cough up that information. I've got this down in red below. Some people will provide information when there's value associated with it. Like they're going to be hesitant to do it unless there's value. Another strategy would be to offer these same sort of selective incentives that I referred to that you could send out via email or text. Like get your store ops IT team to offer them at the register also. Person gives their customer number, scans their card, whatever it is, and you don't have an address, pops up an offer to the person at the register, and it's like, hey, if you give me your address right now, I'll key it in. Here's a coupon for $10 or whatever it is. Another one, I find some big companies like, they had to be in siloed, and so they might have people buying stuff online for delivery, one way or another, pickup, whatever. And sometimes the e-commerce data lives in a different silo than the CRM database. So that would be an area to explore if you could merge in any address data you have from the e-commerce system. Okay. Offer strategy. Should everyone get the same offer? Now, I can't see your hands out there, but like raise your hand if you think yes, and now put your hand down. And how many think everybody shouldn't get the same offer? Raise your hand if you think no. Okay. So back to the whole segmentation thing. People should get different offers. And you probably need to develop segment-specific goals. Now, anybody knows me, I'm like the king of the quadrant. Like I've got a quadrant for anything. And this is a little just basic segmentation model that keys off of frequency and value over there on the right side of the screen. So you see the vertical axis is goes from low frequency on the bottom to high at the top, and the value or margin as the horizontal axis goes from low in the lower left over to high on the right. And so looking at the quadrants, the lower left is low frequency, low value. Above it, high frequency, low value. Upper right-hand corner, high frequency, high value. Lower right-hand corner, low frequency, high value. So those people down in the lower left-hand corner, you probably don't want to do a lot of direct mail to those people. And I made these quadrants all look very proportional, but like quite often, this, if you were to like do these at scale, that lower left quadrant might actually be out to here. Like most stores, most companies have a boatload of like one-time people that come in and don't stick for whatever reason. And you know, you might do some low-cost digital marketing to those people every once in a while. Maybe some kind of follow-up if they actually come in. But these are people you don't want to spend a lot of money on, probably. You know, what you want, this upper right-hand corner, like if I was to scale this, I've got it at a quarter. Maybe it's only 20%, not like 25. Maybe it's only 15% of the total space. Those are the whales. Those are the people, regular, frequent customers, like spend a lot of money. Okay, so you get the vibe. So these are what I call like the shoulder segments here, the upper left one and the lower right. These people down here, high value, low frequency, you're trying to move them into this corner. So like you're trying to get them to buy more frequently. So like a strategy I've seen used have exceptionally good results. And with postage cost being what it is, it's like, it's a no dust strategy. It's like a save now, save later. You send a piece out, it's got 2 coupons. One gets used now, one gets used next period, whenever that is, next month. And you get people to buy more frequently. These people here, next group, these people, you're trying to get them to buy more. So you might look at cross sell, upsell. Here's what they buy, here's what they don't buy. So I'm going to send them some offers for stuff they don't buy. Notice I'm not referencing percentages or anything like that. I'm talking more about philosophy here than I am numbers. Like, you're going to have to test the numbers in your environment and see what the numbers are. I'm just talking philosophy here. You know, people where you want to improve their margin value. Maybe we talked about this a little bit earlier. Instead of free with purchase of. There's this whole repurchase category. There's a couple different contexts of that, but like, for instance, we did a lot of work for one of the major motorsports manufacturers for a year, and similar dynamics to a car. Some buy every year, some 2, some every 4 or 5, whatever. Like the goal with those people, because the sales happen so infrequently, is like you want to get them to repurchase. And you really want to look hard at what their typical gap or time frame is. So you start lobbing stuff at them in front of that, you know, to get them back. Win backs. This would be like for a lapsed customer. Some people call this reactivation. These people almost have to get treated like prospects. If they haven't been around for a while, like, you know, if you've got somebody who hasn't been in the store in a couple of years, they're really like a prospect. So you might have to give them a really good offer to get them, you know, get them coming back to your store versus wherever they've started going to. And then prospecting and acquisitions. My friend Frank Martin says, like, when you start thinking about prospect offers, you have to start thinking about, you know, what's going to get them off the couch. They've got to be head turning, and head turning gets harder and harder all the time. It's like there's a lot of marketing savviness that's developing out there, and people do a pretty good job of staying on top of what their competitors are doing. So, somebody leapfrogs the offer they're throwing out there, and everybody else kind of respond, and then it's like, are you really turning their head if everybody else is doing it? This part is not easy. Like if you got franchise owners and stuff like that, like sometimes some of these offers, like people are really going to get uptight about you use them, and it's like you almost got to hold your nose on some of these offers and just know that it's what you got to do to win the customer and get them in the first time, and then you better market to them well and service them well so they become a ongoing customer with high lifetime value that substantiated all the money you spent to win them. Okay. And that's all we got today. Any other questions, Kelsey?
We have one last one. What type of point of sale systems are conducive to creating that type of model and segmentation that you described?
Well, there's a lot of good ones, and so there's not really a brand name that I can mention that would be preferable. I will say, like, centralized data is like critical. Like I've seen companies with decentralized marketing processes, and I've seen ones with centralized marketing processes where all the data was getting into corporate and corporate owned the data. And that is critical right there. Like, and then aside from that, integrations can be done with just about any, point of sale system. And if there's not a direct integration, data can get exported, via FTP or some other means on whatever interval somebody wants. So there's no magic as far as which system. The two guiding principles are it really should be centralized, and then you've got to have the ability to associate transactions with individual customers. You got to know when they buy and what they bought and cart value and margin and like offer they redeemed. All of that stuff is stuff that you need to do the kind of analysis we've been talking about today.
Someone asked, how can you tell the difference between a reputable data list provider and one that's not worth the money?
Well, so that's a good question. And that's another thing. So it's hard to tell until you test. So if you're just getting into like doing some prospecting, I would probably try 2 or 3 lists, at least 2 or 3. And then I'd look at what the literal responses are. And like, okay, when you test a list, you need to isolate the other variables. Like, so here's what I mean. To have it be a true comparison, it needs to go out at the same time. And you probably need to divide, the market can't be a concern, so you probably need to test each one of the lists, a chunk of each one of the lists into each market. So same offer, same markets, same timing, like, because timing can be a variable. So, let's just pretend here. Let's pretend you've got 300 stores. And you're doing a mailing in March, and you want to test 3 leads. You could still have segment-specific offers, but I would make sure that in each one of those 300 markets got an equal chunk of each list. And then I evaluate the results. Having said that, like, your March mailing, you probably start executing in February and the results coming in March. And so you're not evaluating until April. So you probably got about a 2.5 to 3 months lag before you really can assess things well. But that, the question asked, can you tell the difference? And one that's not worth the money. To me, it's like, let's see who wins. And one list may cost a little bit more money and may be a clear winner. So I hope that answered the question. If you're looking for more than that, just throw something else up there. Okay, somebody asked the question I saw in here, what's a promiscuous customer? So a promiscuous customer is someone who shops with multiple people like you. So they're not really like loyal to your stores and brand. They'll go here today and they'll go tomorrow, and there's people that are deal chasers. For other people that are promiscuous, it's a function of where their life is taking them, as far as like from a driving standpoint. May stop in for something that's on their traffic pattern, but promiscuous shoppers are they're hard to really put together a pattern when you start doing the recency frequency stuff, because they're just kind of sporadic. Okay. Yeah, and I have that segment model. Let me back up over here for a minute. Oops. The truth is, most companies have a lot more segments than just these four. This was just very basic. I mean, they might subdivide these into smaller, but people like promiscuous and sporadic might be outside of this, and like new customers who just started coming to the store where you don't have enough data to associate a pattern with them, they would fall out of here. And like lapsed would probably fall outside of here. So most companies have more than 4 segments that do it well. Okay. Any other questions, Kelsey, that you're seeing on there?
Nope, that's all.
Okie doke. Everybody, thanks for coming. Hope this is helpful. Kelsey will send you an email with the slide deck and I think a recording. Hey, if we can help you do good direct mail, give us a holler. We don't want to just print. We want to help you do stuff that works. Take care. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.